The phone call came at 11:37 on a Tuesday night. I know because I was staring at the digital clock on our nightstand, listening to Angela whisper into her cell phone in the bathroom with the door cracked just enough for sound to escape. "He's just a friend who listens," she said softly, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she thought she was being clever. I stayed perfectly still in our bed, eyes closed, breathing steady. 20 years as an insurance adjuster teaches you patience. You learn to wait, to listen, to piece together the fragments people leave behind when they think nobody's watching. "No, Wilder's asleep. He won't hear anything." "Wrong on both counts, sweetheart." I know. But you have to understand. He's been so distant lately, so cold. You're the only one who really gets me, Brent. Brent. Not a name I recognized from her usual circle of girlfriends. Angela emerged from the bathroom 5 minutes later, slipping back under the covers like nothing had happened. She kissed my forehead, a gesture that once meant something but now felt like a signature on a fraudulent claim. "Good night, honey," she whispered. I waited until her breathing settled into the rhythm of sleep before I allowed myself to think clearly. Brent, a friend who listens, late-night phone calls. The pieces were starting to form a picture, but I needed more evidence. In my line of work, suspicion without proof is just paranoia. The next morning, Angela hummed while making coffee. She wore her blue silk robe, the one she usually saved for special occasions, and her hair was styled even though she claimed to be working from home. "Sleep well?" I asked, testing the waters. "Like a rock," she replied, without missing a beat. "You know how I am once my head hits the pillow." I nodded, sipping my coffee. "Any plans today?" "Just the usual. Conference calls, paperwork. Might grab lunch with Stephanie later." Stephanie Lawton, her best friend and enabler. If Angela was hiding something, Stephanie would know about it. "Sounds nice. I'll be at the Morrison claim site most of the day. House fire out on Elm Street." "Oh, that's terrible. Was anyone hurt?" "No injuries, just property damage, but the homeowner's story doesn't quite add up. Too many convenient details, if you know what I mean." Angela's hand paused for just a fraction of a second as she reached for her coffee mug. Most people wouldn't have noticed, but I'd spent 2 decades catching people in lies. The smallest tells often revealed the biggest deceptions. After I left for work, I sat in my car at the end of our street and watched our house through the rearview mirror. Old habits from investigating insurance fraud. Sometimes the best evidence comes from what people do when they think they're alone. At 10:45, a silver pickup truck pulled into our driveway. A man stepped out, tall, broad shoulders, the kind of build that comes from manual labor rather than gym memberships. He walked to our front door like he'd done it before, no hesitation, no looking around. Angela opened the door before he could knock. I drove to the Morrison claim site, but my mind wasn't on house fires and suspicious circumstances. It was on the man in my driveway, the way Angela had opened the door, and the growing certainty that my marriage was about to become another case file. The Morrison house was a total loss. Flames had gutted the interior, leaving only charred beams and melted fixtures. Mr. Morrison stood beside his insurance adjuster, gesturing toward what used to be his living room. "It happened so fast," he said for the 3rd time. "One minute I was watching television, the next minute everything was on fire." "And where exactly were you when the fire started?" I asked, making notes on my tablet. "Right here in the living room. I barely made it out alive." I nodded and continued documenting the scene. The burn patterns told a different story. Multiple points of origin, accelerant residue near the back door, family photos and important documents conveniently removed before the fire. Mr. Morrison was lying, and he wasn't very good at it. Unlike my wife, who had turned deception into an art form. By 3 o'clock, I had enough evidence to deny the Morrison claim. By 4 o'clock, I was parked across the street from Calder's Auto Performance, where Brent Calder worked as the shop manager. The silver pickup truck sat in the employee parking area. I waited until closing time, watching the mechanics filter out one by one. Brent emerged last, locking up the shop. He was younger than me by maybe 5 years, with the kind of easy confidence that comes from never having your heart broken by someone you trusted. That evening, Angela greeted me with unusual enthusiasm. "How was your day, honey?" she asked, practically bouncing on her toes. "Productive. Caught someone trying to defraud their insurance company." "Oh? What did they do?" "Burned down their own house and tried to blame it on faulty wiring. But the evidence tells the real story. It always does." Angela's smile flickered for just a moment. "Well, I'm sure you'll figure it out. You're so good at that sort of thing." "I am. Speaking of which, I found something interesting today." I pulled a small silver key from my pocket and placed it on the kitchen counter. Angela's eyes fixed on it immediately. "What's that?" she asked, but her voice had changed pitch slightly. "I found it on our bedroom dresser this morning. Any idea what it opens?" Angela picked up the key, turning it over in her fingers. "No idea. Maybe it fell out of your pocket?" "Maybe, but it's not mine. And there was something else." I walked to our bedroom and returned with a black gym wristband, the kind with moisture-wicking fabric and a logo I didn't recognize. This was under our bed, also not mine. Angela examined the wristband with what she probably thought was casual interest. "Huh? Weird. Maybe the cleaning lady dropped it?" "We don't have a cleaning lady, Angela." The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Angela set down the wristband and looked at me with the expression she used when she was about to gaslight me into believing my own eyes were lying. "Wilder, honey, I think you're being a little paranoid. There are probably dozens of explanations for these things. Maybe they belong to the previous owners, and we just never found them before. We've lived here for 8 years. Or maybe one of your friends left them when they came over to watch the game last month." "What friends? Nobody's been over to watch anything." Angela sighed dramatically. "See, this is what I mean. You're always looking for problems that don't exist, always suspicious, always questioning everything. It's exhausting, Wilder. Sometimes I feel like I'm married to a detective instead of a husband." There it was, the deflection, the blame reversal, the attempt to make me question my own sanity. Classic gaslighting technique, and she was better at it than most insurance fraudsters. "You're right," I said, forcing my voice to remain calm. "I'm probably overthinking things. Occupational hazard, I guess." Angela's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Exactly. You spend all day catching liars and cheaters, so you start seeing them everywhere, even where they don't exist." I nodded and put the key and wristband in the kitchen drawer. "You're absolutely right. I'm sorry for being suspicious." "It's okay, honey. I understand. Your job is stressful. But you know you can trust me, right?" "Of course I can." She kissed my cheek and went back to preparing dinner. I sat at the kitchen table, watching her move around our kitchen with the same easy confidence I'd seen in Brent Calder's walk. The confidence of someone who believed they were smarter than everyone around them. That night, after Angela fell asleep, I retrieved the key and wristband from the kitchen drawer. The key was for a gym locker. I could tell from the number etched into the metal in the distinctive shape. The wristband had Calder's Auto Performance printed in small letters along the inner edge. I placed both items back in the drawer and went to my home office. Time to do what I did best: investigate. Angela's phone records were easy enough to access through our family plan. The pattern was immediately obvious once I knew what to look for. Text messages and calls to the same number, always during my work hours, always deleted from her phone by evening. The number belonged to Brent Calder. Credit card statements revealed lunches at restaurants I'd never been to, purchases at stores Angela claimed she'd never visited, hotel charges on days when she said she was working from home. But the most damning evidence was sitting right in our bedroom. I waited until Angela left for her lunch with Stephanie the next day. Then I dusted our headboard for fingerprints using a kit I'd borrowed from a private investigator friend years ago. The prints were clear and fresh. 2 sets besides Angela's and mine. One set belonged to Stephanie, which made sense given how often she visited. The other set was a mystery, but I had a feeling I knew who they belonged to. When Angela returned home that afternoon, I was waiting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee and a folder full of evidence. "How was lunch?" I asked. "Good. Stephanie says hi." Angela hung her purse on the hook by the door and started toward the refrigerator. "Angela, we need to talk." Something in my tone made her stop. She turned around slowly, and I saw a flash of genuine fear in her eyes before she composed herself. "About what?" "About Brent." "Brent? I don't know anyone named Brent." I opened the folder and pulled out a printed copy of her phone records. "According to this, you've called him 47 times in the past month. You've sent him over 200 text messages, and yesterday, while I was at work, he spent 3 hours in our house." Angela's face went through several expressions: surprise, anger, calculation, before settling on wounded innocence. "I don't know what you think you found, but you're wrong. Brent is just a friend. Someone I talk to when I'm feeling lonely because my husband works all the time and barely notices I exist." "Just a friend?" "Yes. Just a friend who listens to me when I need someone to talk to. Someone who cares about my feelings and doesn't treat every conversation like an interrogation." I nodded slowly, letting her think she was winning. "Just a friend who listens." "Exactly." I reached into the folder and pulled out the fingerprint report. "Then explain why his fingerprints are on our bedroom headboard." The color drained from Angela's face. For the first time in our marriage, she was completely speechless. Angela stared at the fingerprint report like it was written in a foreign language. I watched her process the information, seeing the exact moment when she realized her careful lies had collapsed. "That's impossible," she finally said. "You can't just dust for fingerprints. You're not a police officer." "I'm an insurance investigator. Fingerprint analysis is part of my job when dealing with arson cases. I have the training and the equipment. But that doesn't prove anything. Maybe Brent helped me move furniture or something." "The headboard is bolted to the wall, Angela. It hasn't been moved in 3 years." She sat down heavily at the kitchen table, her hands trembling slightly. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Wilder, please. You're taking this all wrong. Yes, Brent has been here. Yes, we've talked. But it's not what you think. Then tell me what it is." Angela took a deep breath, and I could see her switching tactics. The wounded innocence was gone, replaced by righteous indignation. "Fine. You want the truth? Brent is a friend who actually listens to me, who cares about my feelings, who doesn't come home every day looking for problems to solve and lies to expose. When I'm with him, I feel like a person instead of a suspect." "So you decided to bring him into our bedroom?" We haven't." She stopped, realizing that any explanation would only make things worse. "The fingerprints are on the headboard, Angela. Not on the dresser, not on the door frame. On the headboard. Where exactly do you think I found them?" Her composure cracked completely. "You don't understand what it's like being married to you. Everything is evidence. Every conversation is an interrogation. I can't even buy groceries without you questioning the receipt. I question receipts because you've been using our credit card to pay for hotel rooms. Those were for work conferences." I pulled out another sheet of paper, hotel records showing that the rooms were occupied by 2 people, with charges for room service meals and late-night movies. "Work conferences where you ordered 2 dinners and watched romantic comedies?" Angela buried her face in her hands. "This is insane. You've turned into some kind of stalker, going through my phone records, dusting for fingerprints, following me around. This isn't a marriage anymore. It's a surveillance operation." "You're right. It is a surveillance operation. Because my wife has been lying to me for months, bringing another man into our home, into our bed, and pretending it's my fault for noticing. I never meant for it to happen, she said quietly. It just evolved. Brent was working on my car, and we started talking. He was kind and funny, and he made me feel appreciated, something I haven't felt in years. So you decided to appreciate him in our bedroom? It wasn't like that. It was emotional first, the physical part. That came later. I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. Even now, caught red-handed with undeniable evidence, she was still trying to control the narrative, still trying to make me the villain in her story. How long? I asked. How long what? How long have you been sleeping with him? Angela was quiet for a long moment. 4 months. 4 months. I let that sink in. 4 months of lying to my face. 4 months of pretending to be a loving wife while you were bringing another man into our home. Wilder, please. I know how this looks, but it's not what you think. I love you. I've always loved you. Brent is just... he's different. He makes me feel alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. And that justified betraying our marriage? Our marriage was already over, she snapped. We've been living like roommates for 2 years. When was the last time you told me I looked beautiful? When was the last time you asked about my dreams or my fears or anything that mattered to me? When was the last time you gave me a reason to? The words hung in the air between us. Angela's eyes filled with tears, but I'd moved beyond the point where her emotional displays could manipulate me. I want you to call him, I said. What? Brent. I want you to call him and tell him to come over, now. Wilder, no, that's not a good idea. I think it's an excellent idea. If he's just a friend who listens, then he won't mind having a conversation with your husband. Angela's phone sat on the table between us. She looked at it like it might explode. I can't do that. Why not? Because he doesn't know about this conversation. He doesn't know you found out. Then it'll be a surprise for both of us. I reached for her phone, but Angela grabbed it first. No, I won't do that to him. Whatever problems we have, Brent doesn't deserve to be ambushed. But I deserve to be betrayed? That's different. How is it different? Angela stood up abruptly, clutching her phone to her chest. I need time to think. This is all happening too fast. You've had 4 months to think, Angela. 4 months to consider the consequences of your choices. Now it's time to face them. She backed toward the kitchen door. I'm going to Stephanie's house. We can talk about this tomorrow when we've both calmed down. You're not going anywhere. You can't stop me from leaving my own house. Actually, I can. This house is in my name. The mortgage is in my name. The insurance policy is in my name. Legally, this is my house, and I'm telling you that you're not welcome to come back until we've resolved this situation. Angela's face went pale. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. You want to be with Brent? Go be with Brent. But you're not going to use my home as your hotel anymore. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem. You should have thought about that before you decided to redecorate our bedroom with another man's fingerprints. Angela stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her mind working, calculating her options. Finally, she grabbed her purse and headed for the door. This isn't over, Wilder. No, it's not. But it's going to end very differently than you think. After she left, I sat alone in our kitchen, surrounded by evidence of my wife's betrayal. The house felt different now, contaminated somehow, like a crime scene after the investigators have finished their work. I poured myself a drink and started planning my next move. The first call was to my lawyer, Jim Patterson, who'd handled our house purchase and wills. Jim was a straight shooter with 30 years of experience in family law. Wilder, what can I do for you? I need to discuss divorce proceedings, and I need to know about protecting my assets. I see. Can you come in tomorrow morning? We should discuss this in person. Absolutely. And Jim? I have extensive documentation of adultery, photos, fingerprints, financial records, phone logs. Bring everything. We'll want to review it all. The second call was to my bank. I explained that I needed to freeze our joint accounts due to suspected fraudulent activity. It wasn't technically fraud, but Angela's hotel charges and restaurant bills could certainly be classified as unauthorized use of marital funds. The third call was to our insurance company. I reported that our home security had been compromised and requested new locks and a security system installation. By the time I finished making calls, it was nearly midnight. Angela hadn't tried to contact me, which meant she was probably at Stephanie's house, spinning her version of events and painting me as the unreasonable husband who'd overreacted to an innocent friendship. Tomorrow, I'd start gathering more evidence, but tonight, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of what I'd lost. Not just my marriage, but my trust in my own judgment. I'd spent 20 years catching people in lies, but I'd missed the biggest lie of all, the one my own wife had been telling me every day for 4 months. I walked through our house, seeing it with new eyes, the living room where Angela had probably entertained Brent while I was at work, the kitchen where she'd made him coffee and listened to him talk about his day, the bedroom where she'd betrayed everything our marriage was supposed to represent. But as I surveyed the wreckage of my personal life, I felt something unexpected. Relief. The uncertainty was over. The gaslighting had ended. I finally knew the truth, and the truth, however painful, was something I could work with. Angela had made her choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. I spent the rest of the night documenting everything, photographing the fingerprint evidence, organizing financial records, printing email exchanges. By morning, I had a complete file that would make any insurance investigator proud. Angela had played me for a fool, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail. I was very good at my job, and my job was catching liars. Now, it was her turn to be investigated. Jim Patterson's law office occupied the second floor of a converted Victorian house downtown. I arrived at 9 sharp with a briefcase full of evidence and a clear head for the first time in months. "Coffee?" Jim offered, gesturing to a chair across from his mahogany desk. "Please." Jim was 62 with silver hair and the kind of calm demeanor that comes from handling messy divorces for 3 decades. He poured 2 cups from an expensive-looking coffee maker and settled behind his desk. "Tell me what happened." I laid out the timeline methodically, the late-night phone calls, the mysterious key and wristband, the fingerprint evidence, the financial records showing hotel charges and restaurant bills. Jim took notes on a yellow legal pad, occasionally asking for clarification. "This is thorough work," he said when I finished. "Almost too thorough. A judge might question how you obtained some of this information." Everything was gathered legally. Phone records from our family plan, credit card statements from our joint account, fingerprints from my own bedroom furniture. What about surveillance? Did you follow her or hire a private investigator? I observed her activities from public locations. No trespassing, no illegal surveillance. Jim nodded approvingly. "Good. Now, what outcome are you looking for? Quick settlement or contested divorce?" I want her to understand the consequences of her choices. A quick settlement feels too much like letting her off easy. Contested divorces get expensive and ugly. Are you prepared for that? I'm prepared for whatever it takes. Jim closed his notepad and leaned back in his chair. "Wilder, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've seen a lot of angry spouses who wanted revenge more than resolution. Sometimes the best victory is walking away with your dignity and your assets intact." I appreciate the advice, but Angela didn't just cheat on me. She brought another man into our home, lied to my face for months, and then tried to gaslight me into believing I was paranoid. That kind of betrayal deserves consequences. Fair enough, but remember that consequences go both ways. Once we file contested divorce papers, Angela will lawyer up too. She'll start looking for ways to hurt you back. Let her try. I've got nothing to hide. Jim smiled grimly. Everyone has something to hide, Wilder. Everyone. I left Jim's office with a retainer agreement and a timeline for filing papers. The next stop was Calder's Auto Performance. The shop occupied a converted warehouse on the industrial side of town. 3 garage bays faced the street, with a small office attached to the north side. The parking lot was full of cars in various states of repair, some missing hoods, others jacked up on blocks, all bearing the scars of mechanical surgery. I parked across the street and watched the operation. Mechanics moved between the bays with practiced efficiency, their conversations punctuated by the sounds of air wrenches and diagnostic equipment. Brent Calder emerged from the office around 11, clipboard in hand, checking on his crew's progress. He was exactly what I'd expected: tall, confident, with the kind of easy charm that probably made women feel special. Angela had always been attracted to confident men, which was probably why she'd married me in the first place. Back then, I'd been confident too. My phone buzzed with a text message from Angela. "We need to talk. Can you meet me for lunch?" I typed back, "I'm busy. If you want to talk, come to the house at 6 tonight." "I can't come to the house, you changed the locks." "Then I guess we don't have anything to discuss." My phone rang immediately. Angela's number. "Wilder, please, we can work this out." "Can we? Because yesterday you seemed pretty committed to your friendship with Brent." "I made a mistake. I know that now, but throwing away 8 years of marriage over one mistake seems extreme. One mistake that lasted 4 months. Please, just meet me for lunch, somewhere neutral where we can talk like adults." I considered it. Angela was probably hoping to negotiate some kind of settlement that would minimize her losses and maximize her victim's status. But information was always valuable, especially when the other party didn't know how much you already knew. "Fine, Murphy's Grill at noon." Murphy's Grill was a local institution, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. If Angela wanted to meet somewhere public, she'd get more publicity than she bargained for. I arrived first and chose a table in the center of the dining room, where our conversation would be visible to the maximum number of people. Angela walked in 10 minutes later, wearing a conservative dress and minimal makeup, the costume of a wronged wife rather than an adulteress. "Thank you for coming," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "You have 30 minutes. Wilder, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But we can fix this." "How?" "I'll end things with Brent, completely. No more contact, no more friendship, nothing. It'll be like it never happened." "Except it did happen. For 4 months." "I know. And I'm sorry. I'm sorrier than you'll ever know. But people make mistakes, and marriages survive them. We can survive this too." The waitress approached our table. Betty Morrison, whose husband had tried to defraud his insurance company just 2 days earlier. Small towns had a way of connecting everything. "Afternoon, Wilder? The usual?" "Please, and coffee." Betty turned to Angela with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ma'am?" "Just coffee, thank you." After Betty left, Angela leaned forward and lowered her voice. "Everyone's staring at us. That's what happens when you meet your husband for lunch the day after he discovers your affair." "How do they know about that?" "Small towns, Angela. Word travels fast." Her face flushed. "You told people?" "I didn't have to. Betty Morrison's husband tried to defraud his insurance company this week. I denied his claim yesterday. Today I'm having lunch with my cheating wife. Betty's probably already texted half the town." Angela looked around the restaurant with growing panic. "We should go somewhere else." "No. You wanted to meet in public, so here we are. Now tell me what you're really offering." "I told you, I'll end things with Brent." "And then what? We go back to pretending everything is fine? We sleep in the same bed where you brought another man? We sit at the same kitchen table where you lied to my face every morning for 4 months? We'll get counseling. We'll work through it." "What makes you think I want to work through it?" Angela's composure began to crack. "Because you love me. Because we have a life together. Because 8 years of marriage has to count for something. It did count for something, right up until you decided it didn't." Betty returned with our order, a burger and fries for me, coffee for Angela. The conversation paused while Betty lingered nearby, clearly hoping to overhear something juicy. "Anything else I can get you folks?" Betty asked. "We're fine, thanks," I said. After Betty left, Angela tried a different approach. "What do you want from me, Wilder? What would it take for you to forgive me?" "I want the truth. All of it. How it started, how long it's been going on, where you've been meeting, what you've told him about me." "I already told you the truth." "You told me part of the truth, the part you thought I could prove. But there's more, isn't there?" Angela stared into her coffee cup. "What makes you think that?" "Because I know you, Angela. And I know liars. You're still holding something back." "I'm not." I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo I'd taken that morning. Brent Calder's pickup truck parked outside a motel on Route 9. "This was taken at 8:30 this morning. Want to guess who was in room 14? Angela's face went white. "You followed him?" "I followed the evidence. The same credit card you used for your work conferences has charges at this motel going back 6 weeks. Always the same room, always during my work hours. You can't prove I was there. Actually, I can. The motel has security cameras in the parking lot. I'm sure they'll show your car arriving shortly after Brent's truck." Angela put her head in her hands. "This is insane. You're acting like some kind of private detective." "I'm acting like a husband who wants to know the truth about his marriage." "Fine. Yes, we've been meeting at the motel. Yes, it's been more than just talking. Are you happy now?" "Ecstatic. What else?" "What do you mean, what else?" "What else haven't you told me? What other lies are you still maintaining?" Angela looked around the restaurant again, clearly uncomfortable with the public setting she'd requested. "Can we please go somewhere private?" "No, answer the question." "There's nothing else." I pulled out another piece of paper, a bank statement showing cash withdrawals from our joint account, always in $200 amounts, always on days when she claimed to be working from home. "What's the cash for, Angela?" "I don't know what you're talking about." $200, twice a week, for the past 2 months? What did you need $1,600 in cash for? Angela's hands were shaking now. "Personal expenses." "What kind of personal expenses require cash?" "I don't have to justify every dollar I spend to you." "Actually, you do. It's our joint account. My money paying for your affair." "It wasn't for the affair." "Then what was it for?" Angela was quiet for a long moment. Around us, the restaurant hummed with conversation, but I could feel people glancing in our direction. Betty Morrison had probably already sent a group text to her friends. "Gifts," Angela finally said. "What kind of gifts?" "For Brent. Tools for his shop, clothes, dinners at nice restaurants." "You've been buying him gifts with my money?" "It wasn't like that. He's been having financial problems, and I wanted to help." "So you decided to play sugar mama with our joint account?" "Don't be crude." "Crude?" "Angela, you've been supporting your lover with money from our joint account while lying to me about working late. How exactly should I react to that?" Angela stood up abruptly. "I can't do this here. Everyone's watching us." "Sit down." "No. This was a mistake. If you want to destroy our marriage over this, fine. But I won't be humiliated in public." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I left money on the table and followed her into the parking lot. "Angela, wait." She spun around, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Genuine hatred. "You want to know the truth, Wilder? The whole truth? Fine. Brent makes me feel alive in a way you never did. He appreciates me. He desires me. He makes me feel like a woman instead of a roommate. And yes, I bought him gifts because he deserves them, because he gives me something you never could. And what's that? Passion, excitement, the feeling that I matter to someone. You mattered to me. No, I didn't. I was just another case file to you. Another problem to be solved, another mystery to be investigated. When was the last time you looked at me and felt desire instead of suspicion? The question hung between us in the parking lot. Around us, cars came and went, their occupants probably wondering what drama was unfolding between the insurance investigator and his wife. "That's what I thought," Angela said when I didn't answer. "You can have your evidence and your fingerprints and your bank statements, but you'll never have what Brent and I have together." She got in her car and drove away, leaving me standing alone in the parking lot of Murphy's Grill, surrounded by the wreckage of my marriage and the curious stares of half the town. But as I watched her taillights disappear, I felt something unexpected. Determination. Angela thought she'd won this confrontation, but she'd actually given me exactly what I needed. A complete confession, delivered in front of witnesses, with her emotional state clearly visible to anyone who cared to look. Phase 1 of my investigation was complete. Phase 2 was about to begin. The next morning, I drove to the office of Martinez Security Solutions, a small firm that handled surveillance and background checks for insurance companies. Tony Martinez was a former police detective who'd started his own business after retirement, and we'd worked together on several fraud cases. "Wilder, good to see you. What brings you by?" "I need a background check on someone. Brent Calder works at Calder's Auto Performance." Tony raised an eyebrow. "Personal or professional?" "Personal, but I'll pay the standard rate." "Fair enough. What are you looking for specifically?" "Everything. Employment history, credit report, criminal background, civil suits, previous relationships. I want to know who this guy really is." Tony made notes on a yellow pad. "How soon do you need this?" "Yesterday." "I can have preliminary results by tomorrow afternoon. Full report by the end of the week. That work?" "Perfect." I left Tony's office and drove across town to Stephanie Lawton's real estate agency. If Angela was confiding in anyone, it would be Stephanie, and I wanted to know what kind of story she was telling. Lawton Realty occupied a converted house on Main Street, with Stephanie's office in what used to be the living room. She looked up when I walked in, and I saw surprise quickly replaced by wariness. "Wilder, I wasn't expecting to see you. I'm sure you weren't. We need to talk." "About what?" "About your role in covering for Angela's affair." Stephanie's face went carefully neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. You're her best friend and her alibi. All those lunches you supposedly had together while she was actually at a motel with Brent Calder." "Angela and I do have lunch together regularly." "Not according to the restaurant receipts, or the credit card records showing she was somewhere else entirely." Stephanie closed the file she'd been working on and gave me her full attention. "What do you want, Wilder?" "I want to know how long you've known about the affair." "I'm not going to discuss Angela's personal business with you." "Her personal business became my business when she started conducting it in my bedroom." Stephanie winced slightly. "Look, I understand you're hurt and angry, but whatever problems you and Angela are having, dragging other people into it won't solve anything. Other people dragged themselves into it when they decided to help cover up adultery. I never covered up anything." I pulled out my phone and showed her a text message thread I'd recovered from Angela's deleted files. The messages clearly showed Stephanie providing alibis and advice on how to avoid getting caught. "Tell him you're with me if he asks," I read aloud. "Make sure you delete the messages. Brent seems really into you." "Should I keep reading?" Stephanie's composure cracked. "Where did you get those?" "From Angela's phone backup. Turns out she wasn't as careful about digital security as she thought." "You hacked into her phone?" "I accessed data from our shared cloud account. Completely legal." Stephanie stood up and walked to the window overlooking Main Street. "What do you want from me, Wilder?" "I want you to understand that actions have consequences. Angela made her choices, but you helped her make them. That makes you complicit." "Complicit in what? Having feelings for someone?" "Complicit in fraud. Angela used our joint credit card to pay for hotel rooms and gifts for her lover. She lied about her whereabouts and activities. She violated the terms of our marriage contract, and you helped her do it." Stephanie turned back to face me. You can't be serious about pressing charges. I'm serious about a lot of things, including making sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of person they're dealing with when they work with you. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining the situation. Your real estate license depends on your reputation for honesty and integrity. How do you think your clients will feel when they find out you've been helping married women deceive their husbands? Stephanie's face flushed with anger. You're being ridiculous. What Angela does in her personal life has nothing to do with my professional competence. Doesn't it? If you'll lie to help a friend commit adultery, what else will you lie about? Property disclosures, inspection reports, market values. That's completely different. Is it? Lying is lying, Stephanie. And once people know you're willing to lie about one thing, they start wondering what else you might be dishonest about. I headed for the door, then paused and turned back. By the way, your fingerprints were on our bedroom headboard too. Angela must have brought you over to admire her handiwork. Stephanie's mouth fell open. That's not... We never... Never what? Never discussed her affair in my bedroom? Never celebrated her successful deception in the same bed where she was betraying her marriage? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Stephanie sat down heavily in her chair. She was unhappy, Wilder. She felt neglected and unappreciated. When she met Brent, he made her feel special again. So you encouraged her to cheat? I encouraged her to be honest about her feelings. By helping her lie to her husband? By helping her figure out what she really wanted. And what she really wanted was to commit adultery while spending my money and living in my house. She wanted to feel loved. She was loved. She just decided it wasn't enough. I left Stephanie's office feeling like I'd accomplished something important, not just gathering information, but planting seeds of doubt and consequence that would grow in the coming days. My phone rang as I walked to my car. Tony Martinez. That was fast, I said. I got lucky. Brent Calder has an interesting history. Can you come back to my office? 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Tony's desk while he laid out a file thick with documents. Your boy Brent has been busy, Tony said. 3 previous relationships with married women, all ending badly. 2 restraining orders, 1 assault charge that was dropped, and a civil suit for alienation of affection. Alienation of affection. It's an old law, but it's still on the books in New York. Allows a spouse to sue someone who interferes with their marriage. Brent had to pay $15,000 to settle the case. So, this is a pattern for him. Looks that way. He seems to specialize in targeting unhappy wives with money. Tony handed me another document. This is even more interesting. Brent's been having financial problems. Behind on his rent, maxed out credit cards, facing eviction from his apartment. Angela mentioned he was having money troubles. Did she mention that he owes his ex-girlfriend $12,000? Or that he's been sued by 3 different creditors in the past 6 months? I studied the financial records. So Angela wasn't just having an affair, she was being used. Looks that way. Classic con game. Find a lonely, wealthy woman, make her feel special, then let her start supporting you financially. Wealthy? Angela doesn't have that kind of money. No, but you do, and she has access to your joint accounts. The pieces were falling into place. Angela thought she was having a passionate affair, but she was actually the mark in a confidence game. Brent had identified her as a target, seduced her, and manipulated her into supporting him financially. There's more, Tony said, handing me another file. Brent's been bragging about his conquest at local bars, talking about the married woman who's been buying him gifts and paying for hotel rooms. He's been talking about Angela in public? Not by name, but the details make it pretty clear. My source says Brent's been telling people he's got a sugar mama who thinks she's in love with him. I felt a surge of anger, not just at Brent, but at the situation. Angela might have betrayed our marriage, but she didn't deserve to be used and humiliated by a professional manipulator. I want surveillance on both of them, I said. I want to know where they go, what they do, who they talk to. That's going to be expensive. I don't care about the cost. Tony nodded and made notes in the file. What's your endgame here, Wilder? What are you hoping to accomplish? I want them both to understand the consequences of their choices. Angela betrayed our marriage, and Brent made the mistake of targeting the wrong man's wife. Be careful. Revenge has a way of spinning out of control. This isn't revenge, it's justice. Tony gave me a skeptical look but didn't argue. I'll have my people start surveillance tomorrow. You should have daily reports by the end of the week. I left Tony's office with a clearer picture of what I was dealing with. Angela wasn't just an unfaithful wife. She was a victim of a con game who'd become complicit in her own victimization. Brent wasn't just a homewrecker. He was a predator who made a living destroying marriages. The situation was more complex than I'd initially thought, but my resolve was stronger than ever. Angela and Brent had made their choices, and now they were going to live with the consequences. But first, I had one more stop to make. Calder's auto performance closed at 6 o'clock. I waited across the street until the last mechanic left, then watched Brent lock up the shop and walk to his pickup truck. Instead of following him, I got out of my car and approached. Brent Calder? He turned around, immediately wary. Yeah? Who's asking? Wilder Sornel, Angela's husband. Brent's expression shifted from wariness to calculation. He was bigger than me, maybe 6'2", with the kind of build that comes from years of physical labor. But I'd spent 10 years boxing before I became an insurance investigator, and I knew how to read body language. What can I do for you? Brent asked, his tone carefully neutral. We need to have a conversation. About what? About the fact that you've been sleeping with my wife in my house and spending my money. Brent glanced around the empty parking lot, probably calculating his options. Look, man, I don't want any trouble. Then you should have thought about that before you started targeting married women. Targeting? I didn't target anyone. Angela came to me. For car repairs, not for an affair. Brent shrugged. Things happen. People connect. It's not like I forced her into anything. No, you just manipulated her into supporting you financially while you bragged about it in bars. That got a reaction. Brent's face hardened. I don't know what you think you heard, but I know exactly what I heard. You've been telling people you have a sugar mama who buys you gifts and pays for hotel rooms. You've been laughing about how easy it was to seduce a lonely housewife. That's not true, isn't it? Because I have witnesses, Brent. People who heard you bragging about your conquest. People who can testify about what you said. Brent took a step closer, trying to use his size to intimidate me. You're making a mistake, old man. The only mistake I made was trusting my wife. But that's my problem, not yours. Your problem is that you picked the wrong mark. Mark? You think this is some kind of con game? I know it is. 3 previous affairs with married women, 2 restraining orders, 1 assault charge, and a civil suit for alienation of affection. You're a professional homewrecker, Brent, and you're not very good at it. Brent's confidence wavered. You don't know what you're talking about. I know you owe your ex-girlfriend $12,000. I know you're 3 months behind on rent. I know you've been sued by multiple creditors. I know Angela's been giving you cash from our joint account to help with your financial problems. She wanted to help me. She wanted to help you because you made her think you cared about her. But you don't care about her, do you? She's just another lonely woman with access to money. Brent's mask finally slipped. Your wife came to me because you couldn't satisfy her. That's not my fault. Maybe not. But taking advantage of her emotional state to solve your financial problems? That's fraud. Fraud? She gave me gifts voluntarily. Gifts purchased with money from a joint account without the other account holder's knowledge or consent. That's theft, and you're an accessory. Brent looked genuinely worried now. You can't prove that. Actually, I can. bank records, credit card statements, surveillance footage from the motel, witness testimony about your public bragging. I've got enough evidence to bury you. What do you want? I want you to stay away from my wife. Permanently. And if I don't, then you'll find out what happens when someone with my investigative skills and my resources decides to make your life difficult. Brent was quiet for a moment, processing the threat. You can't intimidate me. I'm not trying to intimidate you. I'm explaining the situation. You made the mistake of targeting a woman whose husband knows how to gather evidence and use it effectively. Now you get to live with the consequences. I turned to walk away, then paused. Oh, and Brent? Angela doesn't know about your financial problems or your history with married women. She thinks you're in love with her. When she finds out the truth about what you really are, she's going to be devastated. That's on you. I left Brent standing in the parking lot and drove home, feeling like I'd accomplished something important. Not revenge, justice. Brent had made a career out of destroying marriages and using vulnerable women. It was time someone held him accountable. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Angela. We need to talk, she said without preamble. About what? About what you said to Brent. So you've talked to him. He called me. He's upset. Good. He should be upset. Wilder, you can't threaten people. It's not right. What's not right is a predator targeting my wife and using her to solve his financial problems. Predator? Brent's not a predator. He cares about me. Does he? Did he tell you about his 3 previous affairs with married women? Or his history of restraining orders and assault charges? Silence on the other end of the line. Did he mention that he owes $12,000 to his ex-girlfriend? Or that he's facing eviction from his apartment? That's not... He would have told me. Would he? Because according to my sources, he's been bragging in bars about his sugar mama, who buys him gifts and pays for hotel rooms. You're lying. I have witnesses, Angela. People who heard him laughing about how easy it was to manipulate a lonely housewife. Stop it. You wanted the truth. This is the truth. Brent Calder is a con man who makes a living seducing married women and using them financially. You're not his lover. You're his mark. Angela was crying now. You're just trying to hurt me. I'm trying to protect you. Even after everything you've done, I don't want to see you destroyed by someone who's using you. He loves me. He loves your money. When was the last time he paid for anything? When was the last time he took you somewhere that didn't involve spending money from our joint account? Angela didn't answer. He's been using you, Angela. And when your money runs out, he'll move on to the next lonely woman with a joint checking account. The line went quiet for a long moment. Even if that's true, Angela finally said, it doesn't change what's happened between us. Our marriage is still over. Yes, it is, but at least now you know why. I hung up and went inside, feeling emotionally drained but oddly satisfied. Angela would probably try to convince herself that I was lying about Brent, but the seeds of doubt had been planted. Eventually, she'd start noticing things. The way he always let her pay, the way he avoided talking about his past, the way he seemed more interested in her wallet than her feelings. The truth had a way of revealing itself, especially when someone knew where to look for it. My phone buzzed with a text from Tony Martinez. Surveillance starts tomorrow. You might want to see what we captured today. The attached photo showed Brent and Angela sitting in his pickup truck outside a pawn shop. Angela was handing him what looked like jewelry, probably her wedding ring and the diamond earrings I'd given her for our anniversary. So much for true love. The surveillance photos arrived by email the next morning. Tony's team had been thorough. Dozens of images showing Angela and Brent's activities over the past 48 hours. Photo 1. Angela's car at Brent's apartment complex at 9 in the morning. Photo 2. Angela and Brent entering a pawn shop on the south side of town. Photo 3. Angela handing jewelry to the pawn shop clerk while Brent waited nearby. Photo 4. Angela and Brent at an ATM with Angela withdrawing cash. Photo 5. Brent and Angela arguing in the parking lot of a fast food restaurant. Photo 6. Angela sitting alone in her car outside Stephanie's house crying. The final photo was the most telling. Brent at a bar with two other men, holding up cash and laughing while pointing at his phone, probably showing them photos of Angela. I printed the entire set and spread them across my kitchen table. The story they told was clear. Angela was liquidating assets to support Brent, but their relationship was already showing signs of strain. The argument in the parking lot suggested that reality was starting to intrude on their fantasy. My phone rang. Jim Patterson. Wilder, we need to discuss strategy. Angela's hired a lawyer. Who? Rebecca Torres. She's good and she's expensive. That tells me Angela is serious about fighting this. Let her fight. I've got evidence. Evidence of adultery, yes. But Torres specializes in turning cheating wives into victims. She'll argue that Angela was driven to infidelity by your neglect and emotional abuse. Emotional abuse? It's a common tactic. Paint the husband as controlling, suspicious, and emotionally distant. Make the affair seem like a desperate attempt to find affection and validation. That's ridiculous. Maybe, but it's effective, especially when the husband has been conducting surveillance and confronting the other man. Torres will argue that your behavior proves you're controlling and potentially dangerous. I thought about my confrontation with Brent in the parking lot. What do you recommend? We need to be smarter about this. No more direct confrontations, no more surveillance, no more intimidation tactics. Let the evidence speak for itself. Fine. But I want Angela to understand the full scope of what she's done. What do you mean? I want her to know about Brent's history, his financial problems, and his pattern of targeting married women. She deserves to know she's been played. Wilder, that's not your responsibility anymore. Angela made her choice. Let her live with the consequences. The consequences include finding out the truth about the man she destroyed her marriage for. Jim was quiet for a moment. What are you planning? Nothing illegal. Just making sure the truth comes to light. Be careful. Torres is looking for any excuse to paint you as the villain in this story. After hanging up with Jim, I called Tony Martinez. I need you to compile everything you have on Brent Calder into a comprehensive report. Financial records, criminal history, relationship patterns, witness statements about his bragging, everything. What are you going to do with it? I'm going to make sure Angela gets a copy. Wilder, that might not be a good idea. If she shows it to her lawyer, then her lawyer will see exactly what kind of man her client destroyed her marriage for. Tony sighed. Your funeral. I'll have the report ready by this afternoon. The report arrived at 4 o'clock. 30 pages of documentation that painted a clear picture of Brent Calder as a serial predator who targeted vulnerable women for financial gain. Bank records showed a pattern of sudden financial improvements coinciding with his relationships, followed by rapid declines when the relationships ended. Most damning were the witness statements from 3 different bars where Brent had bragged about his current score, a married woman who was supporting him financially while thinking she was in love. I made 2 copies of the report. One went into my divorce file. The other went into an envelope addressed to Angela at Stephanie's house. But first, I had one more stop to make. The Riverside Tavern was the kind of place where mechanics and construction workers went after their shifts. Dim lighting, cheap beer, and a clientele that minded their own business. According to Tony's sources, this was where Brent had been doing most of his bragging. I arrived at 6:30 and found a seat at the bar. The bartender was a heavy-set woman with graying hair and the kind of no-nonsense attitude that comes from years of dealing with drunk customers. What can I get you? Beer, whatever's on tap. She poured a pint of something local and slid it across the bar. Haven't seen you here before. First time. Friend of mine recommended the place. Said it was where the auto shop guys hang out. Yeah, we get a lot of mechanics. Good tips, mostly. My friend mentioned one guy in particular. Brent something. Works at Calder's Auto Performance. The bartender's expression shifted slightly. Brent Calder. Yeah, he comes in here. Good guy? Depends on your definition of good. He tips well, but he's got a big mouth. How so? She glanced around the bar, making sure no one was listening. Let's just say he likes to brag about his conquests, especially the married ones. Married ones? He's got a thing for other men's wives. Talks about them like they're trophies or something. That's messed up. Tell me about it. Last week he was in here showing pictures of some woman to anyone who'd look, talking about how she was buying him stuff and paying for hotels. My grip tightened on the beer glass. Did he mention her name? Not that I heard, but he was pretty graphic about the details. What kind of details? The bartender leaned closer. Look, I don't like to gossip, but this guy was talking about this woman like she was pathetic, laughing about how desperate she was, how easy it was to manipulate her. It was disgusting. Sounds like a real charmer. He's a user. I've seen his type before. They find lonely women and bleed them dry, then move on to the next victim. I finished my beer and left a generous tip. Thanks for the conversation. No problem. And hey, if you know any married women, you might want to warn them about Brent Calder. He's bad news. I drove home with the bartender's words echoing in my head. Angela thought she was having a passionate affair with a man who appreciated her. In reality, she was being mocked and manipulated by someone who saw her as nothing more than a source of easy money. The envelope with Brent's background report sat on my passenger seat. Angela deserved to know the truth about what she'd destroyed her marriage for. I dropped the envelope in Stephanie's mailbox and drove home, knowing that the next phase of this situation was about to begin. Angela would read the report, confront Brent, and discover that everything I'd told her was true. The fairy tale romance she'd convinced herself she was living would collapse, leaving her to face the reality of what she'd done. But by then, it would be too late to undo the damage. Some choices couldn't be taken back, and some consequences couldn't be avoided. Angela was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The call came at 2 a.m. Angela's number, but when I answered, all I could hear was crying. Angela? You were right, she said through tears. About everything. What happened? I confronted him, about the other women, about the money, about what he's been saying in bars. And? He didn't even try to deny it. He just laughed and said I was naive if I thought it was anything more than a business arrangement. I sat up in bed, fully awake now. Where are you? In my car outside his apartment. He threw me out, said he was done with me anyway because I was getting too clingy. Come home, Angela. Home? You changed the locks, remember? I'll meet you there. 20 minutes later, I was standing in my driveway watching Angela's headlights approach. She looked terrible. Makeup smeared, hair disheveled, wearing the same clothes she'd had on in the surveillance photos from 2 days earlier. Thank you, she said as I unlocked the front door. For what? For trying to warn me. I should have listened. We sat in the living room, maintaining careful distance on opposite ends of the couch. Angela looked around the house like she was seeing it for the first time. I've been such an idiot, she said. You were lonely and vulnerable. Brent took advantage of that. That doesn't excuse what I did to you, to us. No, it doesn't. Angela was quiet for a moment. What happens now? Now you understand why our marriage is over. Because I cheated? Because you chose to cheat? Because you brought another man into our home, lied to my face for months, and spent our money supporting him? Because when I confronted you with evidence, you tried to gaslight me into believing I was paranoid? I know all of that. But people make mistakes, Wilder. Even terrible mistakes. Don't 8 years of marriage count for something? They counted for everything. Right up until you decided they didn't. Angela started crying again. I don't know how to fix this. You can't fix it. Some things can't be repaired once they're broken. So that's it? You're just going to throw away everything we built together? I didn't throw it away, Angela. You did. When you decided that what we had wasn't enough and went looking for something else. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Every day for 4 months, you chose to betray our marriage. That wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. Angela looked around the room again, her eyes stopping on the wedding photos that still hung on the walls. What about forgiveness? What about second chances? What about trust? What about respect? What about the fact that you brought another man into our bedroom and then tried to convince me I was imagining things? I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you the truth. The truth was obvious from the beginning. I gave you multiple opportunities to come clean, and you chose to lie every time. Angela stood up and walked to the mantelpiece, where our wedding photo sat in a silver frame. Do you remember our wedding day? Yes. You promised to love me through the good times and bad, in sickness and health, for as long as we both shall live. I kept that promise until you broke yours. I never stopped loving you. You have a funny way of showing love. Angela turned back to face me. What if I could prove that I still love you? What if I could show you that Brent meant nothing and you mean everything? How would you do that? By fighting for us. By doing whatever it takes to earn your forgiveness and rebuild your trust. It's too late for that. Why? Because you've already made up your mind? Because you'd rather be right than be happy? The question stung because it contained a grain of truth. Part of me did want to be right, wanted Angela to understand the full consequences of her choices, but another part of me, a part I'd been trying to ignore, still loved the woman she used to be. This isn't about being right, I said. This is about being able to trust the person I share my life with. You could learn to trust me again. Could I? How would that work exactly? Every time you're late coming home, I wonder if you're with someone else. Every time you get a text message, I wonder who it's from. Every time you say you're working late or having lunch with a friend, I wonder if you're lying. That would get better with time. Would it? Because I've spent the last week investigating your affair, and I've discovered that you're a much better liar than I ever realized. How would I know if you were being honest or just getting better at deception? Angela sat back down, deflated. So there's nothing I can do? No way to make this right? You can be honest about what happened and why. You can take responsibility for your choices without trying to blame me or circumstances or Brent's manipulation. You can acknowledge that you destroyed something precious and irreplaceable. And then? And then we can both move on with our lives. Separately. Yes, separately. Angela was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands folded in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I did love him, you know. It wasn't just about feeling neglected or wanting attention. I genuinely thought I was in love with him. I know. But I loved you too. I never stopped loving you, even when I was with him. I know that sounds impossible, but it's true. I believe you. Then how can you just let it end like this? Because love isn't enough, Angela. Trust, respect, commitment, those things matter too. And once they're gone, love alone can't sustain a marriage. What if we went to counseling? What if we worked with a professional to rebuild what we've lost? What we've lost can't be rebuilt. It can only be replaced with something different. And I'm not interested in a different marriage with the same woman who betrayed the first one. Angela stood up slowly, accepting defeat. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you hate me? The question caught me off guard. I'd been angry, hurt, disappointed, and disgusted. But hate? No, I said finally. I don't hate you. I'm disappointed in you. I'm hurt by what you did, but I don't hate you. That's something, I guess. It's everything, Angela. The fact that I don't hate you is what makes this so painful. If I hated you, this would be easy. She nodded and headed for the door. I'll come by this weekend to get my things. Okay. And Wilder? I really am sorry for all of it. I know you are. After she left, I sat alone in my living room, surrounded by the remnants of a marriage that had lasted 8 years and died in 4 months. The house felt different now, not contaminated like before, but empty, like something essential had been removed and couldn't be replaced. I thought about Angela's question. Would I rather be right than be happy? The truth was, I didn't know if I'd ever be happy again, but I knew I'd rather be alone and honest than together and living a lie. Some prices were too high to pay, even for love, and some trust, once broken, could never be fully repaired. Angela had made her choice 4 months ago when she decided our marriage wasn't enough. Tonight, she'd finally understood the consequences of that choice. Now, we both had to live with them. But as I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I realized something important. For the first time in months, I wasn't wondering what Angela was really doing or who she was really with. The uncertainty was over. The lies had ended. The truth, however painful, had finally set us both free. Tomorrow, I would start the process of rebuilding my life. Tonight, I would sleep peacefully for the first time since this whole nightmare began. The investigation was over. The marriage was over. But somehow, despite everything, I was still standing. And that was enough.